So welcome everyone. My name is Angela, if you haven't met me before. So I'm the state's advocacy manager for Compassion and Choices. And I'm so delighted to have my colleague Jessica here with us today. So Jessica is our National Director of Clinical Engagement. And she has dedicated a lot of time towards creating, we call it our newly and improved dementia tools and the Dementia Values and Priority tool. And if if you haven't heard about our clinical engagement team, we've had a lot of exciting stuff happening with them. They've really expanded their team. If anybody here is from Colorado and you volunteered with me in Colorado, Ashley Fry, we hired her and she was just named the recipient of the 2024 State Award Excellence from the American Association of Nurse Practitioners. And so she's on our team now. She's on Jessica's team. But she's wonderful. And the goal of Train the Advocate is to, sorry, I'm just letting a couple people in. So the goal of Train the Advocate is to really help advocates feel comfortable having meaningful conversations, learn how to present to your community about end-of-life options, and grow the movement. And together we can ensure that everyone has access to end-of-life care that matches their values, beliefs, and priorities. So we'll be offering multiple Train the Advocates throughout the year. And my hope is that you'll attend them and you'll be getting, as I said, the slides and the script. And you can kind of mix and match them, however you want to present to your audience. Take some of the slides from one Train the Advocate and combine them with other slides. And so today we're going to talk about the Dementia Values and Priority tool and answer any questions you may have. We hope that you will feel comfortable with this tool so you can discuss it with your loved ones and community. And then again, as far as presentations, you can always present just on the dementia tool, or you can add a slide or a couple slides about the dementia tool to other presentations that you're giving. We'll be speaking to you today as a presenter in the way that we hope that you will present in the future and as mentors, so giving you tips on how to present. And then I'm also going to add a short link or short survey, just a link in the chat. If you can fill it out either anonymously and not put your name and email address in there if you want, or you can add your name and what state you live in, and we can connect you with the volunteer efforts going on in your state. But really the survey is just to gather a little bit of feedback from you on whether or not this was helpful, if there's other topics you want to hear about. You can just it should really take just a minute or so to complete. And I'll just add it randomly throughout the presentation. So before we get started, I just want to go over a few technical details. So we ask that you please keep yourself muted and your cell phone silent. Please stay muted throughout the presentation part. If we hear any extra noise or audio feedback, Leslie, who's one of our senior organizers, is going to try to mute you so that everyone can hear. There will be time for questions and answers and discussion at the end. And as a reminder, these presentations are just for general information, so we won't be able to discuss personal cases. However, if you do have a question about a personal situation, in regards to a friend or a loved one who's nearing the end of life, please email us after the presentation and we can connect you with our end of life consultants that can help provide information and resources in your area. And then again, just to cover the group agreements. So use I statements, so speak from your point of view. Life happens, but try to minimize distractions. Build upon, try not to repeat what others have already said. Move up and move back, so allow equal airtime. And then you can ask questions by raising your hand or writing it in the chat. Or really, we try to keep this pretty informal at the end. So if you just take yourself off mute and just start asking the question, try to get our attention. It's sometimes hard to see everybody when they have their hand physically raised on the screen. So every presentation that we start, we always kick it off with our mission statement. So Compassion and Choices is the nation's oldest, largest, and most active nonprofit, working to improve care, expand options, and empower everyone to chart their end-of-life journey. So this is our mission statement. We believe in patient-directed care, where patients should have the ultimate decision of choosing treatments that align with their individual priorities. Patients and healthcare professionals should work together as a team. Your healthcare provider should not be making such decisions alone. And then before we move forward, I just want to take a moment to recognize that this can be a difficult topic to discuss and even think about. So my guess is that most people joining today have loved someone or have known someone who has lived with dementia or, died from Alzheimer's or a disease like dementia. So my grandmother, who was an amazing woman, she lived with Alzheimer's for many years. And just from a personal experience, loved every minute with her, but there were times where it was scary and frustrating and heartbreaking for our family. So we are really working to help transform the way people live and die with dementia and hope that you'll feel empowered after this training. To briefly cover dementia, it's just an umbrella term for a progressive loss of memory, language, cognitive abilities, and functional capacities serious enough to interfere with daily life. So the most common type of dementia is Alzheimer's disease, and this accounts for 60 to 80% of all dementia cases. We know that mental decline can look different for different people. So most cases of dementia can last anywhere from 2 to 20 years. And during the advanced stages of dementia, most people endure irreversible loss in mental and bodily function in which they cannot recognize loved ones, cannot recognize surroundings, cannot speak or make oneself understood, experience personality changes, and cannot respond to the environment, speak, or control movement. However, as I said earlier, dementia is a progressive disorder. Many people can live several meaningful and enjoyable years after the onset and diagnosis of dementia. So we also know that dementia is a global epidemic and public health priority. It is known as a family disease, so it can be overwhelming, not just for the people who have been diagnosed, but also for their caregivers, families, and loved ones. There is a lack of awareness and understanding, which results in stigma around dementia, barriers to diagnosis and care, as well as physical, psychological, and financial impacts. In the United States alone, nearly 7 million Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's disease, and it is estimated that at least 13.8 million older adults in the US will have Alzheimer's by the year 2060. And I just want to point out that I'm just referring to Alzheimer's disease. This doesn't include all the other types of dementia, such as vascular, Lewy body, and others struggling to get a clear diagnosis. And dementia is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States, and this was even higher pre-COVID. Despite what we know, experts suspect that dementia continues to be under-recognized and underreported as a cause of death. And we also know that dementia discriminates. Almost 2/3 of Americans living with Alzheimer's disease are women. And women also tend to be the primary caregivers for those who are living with Alzheimer's. Older Black Americans are twice as likely to have Alzheimer's than older white Americans, and older Latino and Hispanic Americans are 1.5 times as likely to have Alzheimer's than older white Americans. So advanced care planning for dementia. So every adult with mental capacity has the right to document their desire to forego medical treatment. Before a person living with dementia loses their decision-making capabilities, a person can also choose to voluntarily stop eating and drinking. So if you attended last week's presentation on Friday, we went over voluntary stop eating and drinking in a lot more detail. But in case you missed it, I'll just briefly cover what it is. So voluntary stop eating and drinking, the acronym for that is VSED, just VSED. And this is when a person who has decision-making capability decides to voluntarily stop all food and fluid to allow for a death that is consistent with the body's natural dying process. It is a patient-directed approach, and it is legal in all 50 states. However, as we discussed last Friday, it's important to talk to your healthcare providers and hospices to see if they're supportive of this option. So some people who have been diagnosed with dementia make a decision while they still have their decision-making capabilities to go through the voluntary stop eating and drinking process to avoid living with advanced dementia. And so we also know that there's a lot of evidence behind the benefits of advanced care planning, and more importantly, the process of discussing and documenting a person's wishes, preferences, and goals of care. I've listed some of them up here on the screen, but we'll cover this more in detail in the Train the Advocate, where we go over advanced care planning. So, however, we do know that the standard advanced directives do not address the complex and unique needs of people living with progressive neurological diseases of the brain. In addition, research has shown that it's often assumed that informal caregivers know the preferences of the person who's living with dementia best. However, some studies have found that more than 1/3 of caregivers cannot predict the person living with dementia's preferences correctly. Most caregivers try to compensate for the decreasing abilities to support the patient's well-being, but might sometimes reject their own preferences instead of putting themselves in the person who's living with dementia's position. Furthermore, caregivers' preference prediction for a person living with dementia can subconsciously be influenced by how a caregiver's own life is affected by certain decisions. And now I want to introduce Jessica, who's going to be taking over and going over our dementia tool with you more.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Impeno. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I am coming to you from California. I'm in San Diego area, and I joined the organization last year. I am a medical social worker as my background and have spent many years working with families, with people living with dementia, as well as in hospice, palliative care, and a lot of other things. And really helping people understand, live well with dementia, helping families, I like to say ride the wave rather than having the wave crash over them, is a really big part of my work. And so it's my pleasure to really be leading this work with Compassion and Choices. And so, as you probably know, as Angela has said, Compassionate Choices is really working to ensure that people can plan for the life and the death that they want if they're living with dementia. And our goal is to empower people to take action, to consider what matters most to them, and to talk about those wishes, talk about what's important to them. And so the Dementia Values and Priorities tool is one of the great resources we offer for people to be able to do that. Many of you know, and thank you for the comments I saw already in the chat. This tool's actually been around for a few years, and we recently have done some work to update it and to really incorporate some of the feedback that we got from you and others in the community, as well as other professionals, to make it a more useful tool that is empowering, educates people, but also aligns with some of the other advanced care planning tools out there. So, the Dementia Values and Priorities tool is designed to help people communicate and, more importantly, document their wishes regarding future care if and when they might be living with dementia. And so, what it does is it guides people through a series of questions based on end of life issues, based on the changes and the things that are commonly seen in the progression of dementia. The tool is relevant for all types and causes of dementia. So if somebody's living with Alzheimer's versus vascular dementia, that doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to this tool. So this tool is offered by Compassion Choices at no cost. It is available both online and by paper. So people can use the interactive version through the website, which I'm going to show you and we're going to walk through here in just a second. But we also have a version that people can open a document and either complete the document and save it electronically or even print it out and then have that paper version. Once you've gone through the tool and you've answered all the questions and the tool is complete, the document then should be saved. It should be signed in front of a witness or a notary. And what we advise is that people save it with their other advance directive forms. And the other thing that we really want to encourage people to do is talk about it. Talk about their wishes, talk about what's important to them. Because if you fill out this tool and then just file it away, lock it up in the safe, right? Nobody knows that it's there. It's not really doing any good. So the most important thing is to have that conversation. I'm also really excited to say a couple of you noticed the changes that have happened to the tool. I have a few more edits that I'm working on currently that are coming to make the tool even better and even more user-friendly. A lot of the changes that we've done really focus on using language that is more easily understood, more plain language. If you've heard of the term health literacy, it's really about helping people understand and use their healthcare information. And so this tool really aligns with the concepts of health literacy, and the questions also align with the choices that are available in the post form. So you'll see more changes coming soon. And among those, we will be creating a Spanish version. So once the English version is all wrapped up, we will have a Spanish version coming soon, both online and on paper. So we'll keep you posted and you'll be seeing those very soon. So let me walk you through the tool and show you some of the different features and the different things that we have now incorporated. All right. So one of the first things that I'm excited to point out is that we have updated our dementia page on the Compassion and Choices website. And so when you come to the website, this is what you're going to see. It's a little bit more streamlined. There's more information here. We have a new education and videos page that has lots of other videos, links to our storytellers that are specific to dementia that you can check out. But right here, you'll see the Dementia Values and Priorities tool. And when you click on it, it goes straight to the tool itself. Now, if you've been with us a little bit or you remember the old version, you'll remember that when you clicked on the tool, it took you to a different web page, kind of looked a little bit different, required you to create a password and log in. That is all gone. So now when you click on the page, you're right here at the tool. So it's a lot more accessible, a lot easier to use. You don't have to worry about passwords. Now the trade-off to that means that if you leave the tool at any time, your information is not saved. So the benefit of that is it's confidential, it's accessible, it's easy to use, easy to come in and out of. But the downside is that that information is not saved anywhere, okay? So in order to get started, simply click on the Start button here. And the first thing that you see is going to be a little screen to just give you an orientation to how to use the different tools. So there is a menu up here, which if you click on it, opens kind of like a table of contents. So if you want to navigate and go back and forth quickly, you can. Otherwise, just click on that and it'll make it go away. Otherwise, we're going to use the arrows at the bottom here to proceed. So one of the things that we did in updating the Dementia Values and Priorities tool is we really wanted to align it with best practices around advanced care planning. And if you're familiar with the End of Life Decisions Guide, a lot of this information comes from that. So it starts by talking about quality of life, about what matters most, about thinking about the future, because that's where we really want to start, is thinking about your values, your priorities, your wishes, and what's important to you. Now, I want to point out something. You'll notice here there are some words that are blue underlined texts. These are called hyperlinks. And when you click on them, we have incorporated a bunch of little short videos throughout the tool that explain these key concepts. So when I click on quality of life, it's going to open the video to explain what we mean when we say that.
quality of life. This is a term that really focuses on the quality or the value of the time that we spend, as opposed to the quantity of that time.
So you'll see these are a bunch of, 20, 30, 40-second videos, very brief, featuring clinicians from Compassion Choices explaining these terms. So then we start going into advanced directive. What is an advanced directive? Explaining that really important information for people because it lays a really nice foundation for what we're about to do with this dementia tool, right? And we want to explain, again, explaining these key terms so that people understand what we're talking about. So let's see here. Let's click on this one just to give you one more.
Medical treatments. These specifically refer to medical therapies that are intended to treat acute and chronic illnesses with the intent to keep someone alive longer.
Pretty short and sweet, but you get the idea, right? So as we go, people can click on these links if they choose to, watch it as many times as is helpful for them, to be able to understand some of these really important terms. And these are things that people may hear a lot, like comfort care, I think of as a really popular one, right? We hear this term comfort care, but it's not always explained to us what we mean when we say comfort care. So this was really important to us and a project that we were really excited to incorporate into the tool. So as we continue along, we talked about advanced directives. We talk about surrogate decision makers and how to choose someone to be your surrogate decision maker, and who is going to be that good person, because it may or may not be someone related to you, right? So we walk people through that information. And then we go into additional things to think about just with regards to advanced directives. I made the comment before that it does no good if it's locked away in a drawer. These are that same sort of thing, right? So discussing your wishes, providing copies. We know that really only like 1 in 3 people have completed an advanced directive, and even less have shared it with their doctor or their healthcare team, let alone their family, or whoever they've chosen as their surrogate decision maker. So your wishes, whatever you've written down, are going to be no good if nobody knows about them, right? And you need to be able to share that before that crisis comes so that your surrogate decision maker knows how to make decisions on your behalf. So that's the important information that we start with to really lay that foundation. And then we go into a dementia directive, which is what this tool will provide you. So once you go through the tool, the completed document is known as a dementia directive. It's an addendum to an existing advanced directive. So it's not meant to exist on its own. It's meant to be attached to an advanced directive to provide additional information on what's important to you specific to the progression of dementia. And so now we've gone through that, just kind of introductory foundational information, and now we're ready to start the actual tool itself. And we do have a reminder here that all the information that's entered is not only confidential, and it will not be shared in any way because we don't collect it. I don't have a way to share it, but also that responses are not saved when you exit the tool. So when you hit start, we're now in the tool. And it starts with a page here to explain the question options, the responses that are available to the questions that are about to come. So for each question on the following pages, select one of 3 options to indicate your care preferences. And if you're familiar with a POLST or a MOLST form, you'll notice that these 3 options align to what is in a POLST, right? And that is living as long as possible, or what some people refer to as more aggressive treatment. The second one here is treat me but not aggressively, or the POLST will say something along the lines of selective treatment. And the third being allow a natural death, or what some refer to as comfort care, or keep me comfortable, that sort of thing. And we took the time, it's a lot of text, I know, But we took the time to explain what each of these mean so that people have a better understanding. There are links to a bunch of videos in here to explain things like nutritional support and CPR, and what life-sustaining treatment, what that even means. So you'll see those links in here as well. Make sense? You still with me? Thank you. All right. So we're going to hit continue. And you're going to start by entering your name here. And this is what's going to serve as the very top heading of the tool of the document when you're all done, saying that I'm completing this document because I want my surrogate decision makers to know my wishes regarding the type of care I want if I'm living with advanced dementia. And so now we have a series of about 10 questions here. And you'll notice that all the questions are in this if, then format. So if this is what's going on, then this is what I want. So this first one is, if my physician or healthcare provider has determined my dementia has progressed to advanced or late stage, then I want. And again, you'll see these 3 boxes here. We have our options. So I want to live as long as possible, treat me but not aggressively, or I want to allow a natural death. Okay, and so we're going to choose our answer and continue. If I require around the clock, in other words, 24-hour assistance and supervision, then I would want. You choose your answer and continue. If I no longer recognize my loved ones, and so those of you that are familiar with dementia or maybe have been through it with someone you know or love, you'll recognize that these are changes that are common in the progression of the disease. And these are things that, in my experience, working with people with dementia, have said to me, this is my line in the sand, right? This is what matters to me. So that's where a lot of this comes from. So let's choose and continue. If I am unable to walk or move safely without assistance from a caregiver, then I would want. If I am unable to bathe and clean myself without assistance from a caregiver, then I would want. If I am unable to remain at home and have to live in a nursing facility, then I want. If I no longer have control of my bladder, which is known as urinary incontinence, or bowels, which is known as bowel or fecal incontinence, then I want. If I no longer am aware of my surroundings, so in other words, where I am, the date, the year, who is with me, that sort of thing, then I want. If I am unable to clearly communicate my thoughts or needs, in other words, words and phrases do not make sense, then I want. If my physician or healthcare provider determines I have 6 months or less to live, then, and you'll see this is a slightly different question with different options, because we wanted to start people thinking about hospice and understanding hospice. Margot, that is an amazing question. I have an answer for you in a minute, I promise. So with hospice, the answer options are, I am interested in hospice care to support me and my loved ones. I would like to enroll as soon as I am eligible. Or I am not interested in hospice. Or I am unsure at this time, and my surrogate can make that decision on my behalf when the time comes. The next question, so we've moved out of the initial 10 kind of if-then format questions, and now we're moving into some more kind of specific things. So this one really talks about food and drink, artificial nutrition, nutrition support, long-term feeding tubes, that sort of thing is what we're referring to here. So it says, if the changes caused by dementia result in any of the following: I no longer appear to desire food or drink, turn my head, or otherwise avoid being fed or given fluids. I do not open my mouth to accept food or drink without prompting, and all food or drink must be provided by a caregiver, which many refer to as hand or spoon feeding. I am unable to safely swallow food or drink, so coughing, choking, aspirating, which is often very common with dementia, or the negative consequences of continued food or drink as determined by a medical provider outweigh the benefits. Then I request all food and drink be stopped, including nutrition support and hydration. And so that is a yes or no answer. The next one says, so this is where we kind of get into the leniency, so to speak. So the next one says, dementia is unpredictable and different for everyone. My hope is either this document will help guide my medical team and surrogate decision makers. I authorize them to be flexible and make decisions based on what they feel is in my best interest. Or this document should serve as clear and precise direction to my medical team and surrogate decision maker. My wishes should be followed as much as possible, even if they would prefer personally another option. Margot, this one's for you. So, additional information important to you. So this is your opportunity to provide those caveats, those additional thoughts, information, anything that's important that maybe wasn't covered in the other questions, or anything more that you want to say about anything else. So things that were not included, things that you might be interested in, other things that are important, okay? And that's that. This is just an open text space where you can write that in. So that was something that we added back into the tool. That was a lot of people had feedback that they would appreciate that option to do so. The other thing that I failed to mention is it is an option to skip a question. That wasn't an option in the old version. So if, let's say, you know, back here, I don't feel like answering this question, I just don't know right now, it will allow you to skip it. Okay. So you would enter just typing in information in here and continue. This would be your personal information, the person that's completing this form. And we've reached the end. So you can see it doesn't take a real long time, anywhere from usually about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how much thought, depending on how many videos you click on. So anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. When you reach this screen, we've provided a little checklist of kind of those next steps. Clicking here will open a window that you are not able to see because of the way I shared my screen, and I apologize for that. But this will open a window that shows you the report. I will come back to that in just a second. The other option is to click here and allow somebody to get connected with Compassion and Choices so that they can provide their information. And that is it. Let me show you. I'm going to stop sharing real quick here so that I can show you the report as it appears when it comes up. So this is the report. Whoops. So once someone clicks on view your custom report, this is a sample of what it will see, what it will look like. Now, I do want to I'm telling you all, because you are working with us on sharing the word about this. This is one of the things that is going to be updated. We got some feedback from folks that the new format where it groups the like answers, you can see that all the questions that I chose this response to are in the top box. All the questions I chose this response to are here, and so on. And we got feedback from a lot of people that that was maybe not the best format. They found that confusion, or there was some confusion with it. So that's one of the things that we are changing. And I did see the question, Marianne, about when we expect those changes to be wrapped up. We should be wrapping those up pretty soon. So probably in the next few weeks or so. And then we will be able to start the translation of this and creating the Spanish version. Okay. With this report here, down at the bottom, there's a button here where you can either print it or you can save it. And those are the options that you will have. So the best option will be to save it, so you have that electronic copy, and then from there, if you want to email it, you want to, upload it to your portal for your physician, email it to family, friends, loved ones, you have that option to do so. Angela,
We're almost done with the presentation, and then we'll open it up for Q&A more. So Nico, can you go back to sharing your screen? So I just quickly wanted to also go over the diagnosis decoder. So you may be familiar with this. We have it for general illnesses, for people who are have received a cancer diagnosis, and then we also have it for a dementia appointment. You can mark this down if you've been diagnosed with dementia and you want to find out more information, or you could go in and select that you're like a caregiver or a loved one for someone living with dementia. And then it's going to you kind of mark what issues you're concerned about, and then it will populate a list of questions that you can ask your doctor to help you get information that's important to you. So for example, one of the questions when I went in and marked that I have a diagnosis of dementia, a question might be, are there any local organizations that I should reach out to try to find out more information or get more resources about dementia? You can ask, what stage is my dementia right now? Are there symptoms associated with each stage that I should be on the lookout for? And then you can also, another one was, how will this disease affect my body and my daily quality of life? If you're a caregiver or a loved one, some of the questions will be, can you explain treatments and medications for symptoms that my loved one currently has or may have? For example, memory loss, mood changes. When should I consider requesting comfort care or hospice care for my loved one? And then one that always sticks out to me the most is asking about what different tests are for and are they necessary. And the reason for that is because every time my grandmother was moved near the end, it was very, very traumatic for everyone involved, including my grandmother. She just became very disorganized and didn't know where she was. And so you can always ask, like, what happens if this test is not done, right? And is there other ways to get this information? So it will just give you prompt questions that you can print, the ones that you like, you just select them and then take them to your doctor's appointment. And then we always also end every, we have a couple different ending slides. This is one that I like for Train the Advocate, but just on ways for people on how they can get involved. And this can just be simply, going online and ordering our end of life decisions guide, filling it out, sharing it with your friends, sign up for Compassion and Choices information to stay informed. You can sign up to become a volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers. It's really how we get this information out. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I oversee like 25 states. So there's no way that I can go to each of these states and get this information out or know all the like good local organizations and local community centers and have the built-in communities that you all have right where you live. And you can also, you can invite us to give a presentation. I do presentations over Zoom, but I also try to find volunteers who can help give presentations. And then you can also donate to Compassion and Choices. Over 96% of our funding actually comes from individual donors like you. And I didn't say this last week, I'll say it here, if you're ever giving a presentation on our behalf, sometimes asking people to donate can feel weird. I just write it into my script and say it. I'm a social worker. So I have always kind of worked in the setting where I've never asked for money or expected anything in return. So it was really awkward for me to get started saying this, but now it just kind of rolls off my tongue because I believe in the mission that we're doing at Compassion and Choices. And it's really important to be able to keep getting this information out. So and we can go ahead. Nico, if you want to just share the next screen so I can briefly go over some upcoming events. So January 31st, they're doing a webinar on Beyond Resolutions, how to rewrite your story for a transformative 2024. This is actually a life coach is doing this, and I believe it's not something I'm doing, but it is a way to kind of work through grief after you've lost a loved one, from what I read in the summary about it. We also do voluntary Zoom advocacy calls. So I'm going to go ahead and share that link. And if you're interested in getting connected with your state advocacy team, then you can put your, I don't know what link I just shared actually. Ignore that one. So here is the link, the one that ends in form. So if you want to get involved in the states that I oversee, we host volunteer Zoom advocates where advocates can just get together on Zoom, talk about best practices, come up with ideas, ways to do outreach, get information from other people. And then on February 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, we're doing Train the Advocate 103, the Death Deck. So this is a card game. It's actually pretty fun. And it was created by a hospice social worker, and then also it is the surviving spouse of one of her patients. They had run into each other 5 years after the patient had passed away, and the wife had just shared that there was so much that she didn't have answers to. Like, she thought she had planned so well for the end of his life. He had only been 40 years old and died from cancer. But in the last couple of weeks of his life, he wasn't able to communicate. And then she started having all these questions. So really, the death deck is to kind of address some of those questions and things that we might not commonly think about. But they tried to add a little humor to it to make it a little bit more fun. And then on February 28th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're doing Train the Advocate 104 Advanced Care Planning. And Nico, go ahead and stop sharing. And then I see Amelia has a question. If I can just ask one question real fast while we still have Jessica here. I had got a message about, I don't know where it went in my chat, but basically that there is a big difference between receiving a dementia diagnosis and having, an understanding competency, and then choosing when you want to die. And so how does somebody, and if I've misstated this, feel free to take yourself off mute and say it, but how does someone determine where that is?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I was trying to reply to questions and things that were in the chat and in the Q&A. So if you asked a question there, hopefully I answered it. So this is a really tricky thing because dementia is different for everyone. The way in which it affects the brain, the way that it progresses, what symptoms and changes a person experiences, and at what rate is different for everyone. So there is no, easy way to be able to say it depends on that person. So some people are completing this and they're not experiencing cognitive changes. They're not diagnosed or even, living with those things, but it's something they're concerned about. And that's okay to do, right? It's okay to plan ahead in that way. If somebody is already living with cognitive changes, or maybe they have received a diagnosis, just as a side note, getting a diagnosis, a clear diagnosis of what type of dementia, whether it's a reversible or an irreversible type, is an extremely challenging and often time-consuming process that not everybody has access to. So for some people, they don't get that diagnosis until they're midway through the disease and are experiencing a lot of impairments. So that's a long way of saying it's different for everybody. And depending on that particular person and what ability they have for decision making, understanding risks and benefits, weighing a decision, this needs to be completed just like any other legal document would before somebody loses that ability. Angela, can I answer a couple of other questions that I see?
Yes, are you guys okay with that? Amelia and Lori? Okay, yes.
One of the other questions along those same lines is about the legality. I saw a couple of questions about that, right? People will say, is this a legal document? How does it stand up against laws and things like that? And that's a really great question. And this is actually something that I've been working with our legal team to be very clear on. So first off, one of the important things to know is that laws regarding what makes a valid advance directive are different in every state. This is why we recommend if people travel frequently, live in multiple states, or, like in the case of my parents, they live in Arizona, but they come to California for their health care, they might need to have, and I've told my parents, they need more than one advance directive, right? Because that advance directive that was done in California, excuse me, well, vice versa, done in Arizona, is not going to be valid in the same way in California, right? Now, as a clinician, we would look at that Arizona directive and say, huh, okay, this is helpful. I'll take it under consideration, right? But it's not treated as that legal, we must abide by it document in that same way. So the Dementia Values and Priorities tool does not meet every state's requirements around what makes an advance directive. It can't, right? Every state's different. But what it does do is it serves as kind of like evidence of what a person's wishes are. And that's why we advise that it be attached to an existing legal in that state advance directive. Because then it serves as that additional evidence of what a person's wishes are. So completing a power of attorney, this is another thing. So when we talk about advance directives have multiple parts, right? An advance directive is what allows you to say what you want and who you want to make decisions for you. Those are the two parts. So a living will, if you're familiar with that term, in some states, an advance directive is a living will, but in most places, a living will is the part of the advance directive where you indicate what you want. And then there's the part that indicates who you want making your decisions. And so, yes, every state is different in terms of what makes that truly a by definition legal document. So it's important to be able to use the form from your state, be familiar with the resources of your state and maybe surrounding states, so that you are pointing people in the right direction. If there are any questions about that, we are happy to help. Our end-of-life consultation service is also happy to help, and we have resources on the Compassionate Choices website too.
Thanks, Jessica. Amelia, thanks so much for being patient. You want to take yourself off mute and ask the question?
Oh, I thought I was off mute.
Oh, maybe.
Am I off mute?
I can hear you now.
Good, good. So what I wanted to ask, like, because I have, the dementia toolkit, you had it before and I filled it all out. So is that still legitimate? Is that good? That what I signed? Or do I have to sign a new one?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if somebody did complete the old form, it is still valid in the same way that it was, assuming, like we said, it's attached to an advance directive. So yes, it still works. We just went through and made some updates and improvements for this version. So it's completely up to you. It's a personal choice if you want to complete the new form.
Another question. How long before do you have to have these forms filled? Like, let's say, God forbid, I fill out the form today and tomorrow I have dementia. Would that be legal?
It is legal as long as you are the person completing it for yourself. You are able to sign, you have that capacity, decision-making capacity to be able to sign a document. So yes, as long as all of those things are in place and nobody is placing undue influence on you to try to convince you to sign any one particular thing, then you're fine.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thanks. Lori?
Hi,
Oh, you went on mute. You came off
Okay.
there.
Okay, now everybody's good. This, as I said, this is great. It's so needed. One of the things I just wanted to check up, when you quickly went to the final, what it looks like after you answer the questions, I noticed when we started answering the questions, it said, this is how I would answer if I have been determined to be advanced, if it has been diagnosed with advanced dementia. So, those answers are only if that's where you are. So when you press see your final report, does it say that on the top of the document that's only because when you've been determined at advanced stage? I didn't notice that kind of phrase before it showed how you would answer the different categories.
Yeah, so it really focuses more on whether you are experiencing that particular symptom. So if you are having difficulty recognizing people, then what would you want, right? So it goes more by the change or the symptom that a person is experiencing, because being able to determine what stage a person is in is pretty challenging. It's one of the things that families want most, and it's one of the hardest things to be able to give, because it changes and everybody's so different. So it's not necessarily about the stage of dementia that a person is in, but it's more about what they're experiencing.
Well, so one of the questions was a loss of control, using the bathroom as an example. So, personally, if I was totally still cognitively sound and whatnot and had bladder loss, I would want treatment. Because I'm still able to function, I still have the quality of life. If that's how I determine it.
Right.
But if someone told me, oh boy, you're advanced, if you're at that stage and you have advanced dementia and I have that, then I would have a different answer. So that's why I asked about, the benefit of perhaps couching it, because your question prior to answer the question, it couched it that way, that you've just been diagnosed with advanced dementia. Given that, how would you answer these questions? So that's why I think maybe it's just explaining it to the people, as the clients or whoever, if you're doing it yourself, what that means. It's because my answer for some of them might be totally different. If I can't eat well, but if I'm all there, then I might have a different answer if I'm still mentally sound. So anyway,
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Lori. And what you are describing is the great challenge of a dementia directive, right? Because it is so subjective, and people's opinions of what they want might change over time depending on what else is going on, right? If somebody's living with lots of other chronic diseases, or they have other things they're living with, then that can influence things too. So you're right. It is tricky to be able to do that and have something that works for everyone. And that's why we also gave that space for somebody to be able to write out what
Right.
is important to them, because it gives you that chance to give that extra detail.
Right. And to communicate it with your healthcare proxy so they fully understand all the nuances as well. So yeah, great. Thank you.
If nothing else, I hope that's what you all take away from this. The most important thing is talking about it. Have the conversation, right? Fill out the tool or not, sign it or not, but let's talk about it. That's what we really want to do.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill?
Thank you so much. I'm so glad Lori went first because mine goes right along with that. So I used your guys' tool in the majority of my advanced care planning with clients, and I am so grateful for it. And so thank you, and thank you for this updated form. I think it's going to help a lot. One thing, like Lori was mentioning, that I know with my clients I've had to do is always repeat and remind them that they are answering this provided. I think in a previous forms, we called them markers. Like this was a marker that you can experience in the if then questions. And so if you had the marker where you were unable to go to the bathroom on your own and do all that, what I found with clients, and I'm curious, maybe even in your experience with dementia patients, for a question like the bowel movement and being unable to kind of clean and go to the bathroom on your own, can you give an example of what you would be agreeing to if you checked treat me but not aggressively versus allow a natural death? So kind of like Lori was saying, if you have some other things, you're still competent, but you can no longer go to the bathroom, like what are you allowing or not allowing when you choose between those two? That seems to kind of be a little bit confusing for people. And so I'm always looking for help on how to guide folks.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Jill. And your comment also made me think for all of you that are professionals, somebody else, Jennifer, I think said you're a doula and you want to use this with your clients. Jill, you mentioned that. I would love to talk to you and love to be able to support you in how you're using this in a professional capacity, because there's some things we might be able to collaborate on. But to answer your question,
Okay.
we tried to help in making that clear for folks through the slide that defines the different care preferences. So before the questions start, and just really quick to show you, I'm referring to this slide right here. So this is where we try to help people understand the difference because there are some nuances.
Mhm.
So we're talking about kind of this middle one, right? Treat me, but not aggressively. So we're talking about, treating, or excuse me, continuing medications, continuing treatments for chronic conditions, kind of almost like maintaining the status quo, if you will. But if something comes up, we don't want surgeries. We don't want aggressive treatments. I don't want, maybe I don't want to go get IV antibiotics, right? Maybe let's try the oral antibiotics because I don't want to have to be in a hospital or a facility, strapped down with an IV for IV antibiotics. Long-term feeding tubes. So maybe we are looking at shorter term feeding tubes, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference. Those two, but a long-term permanent surgically placed in the gut feeding tube, right? That kind of thing. Versus allowing a natural death is, I really want to focus on my comfort. I want to focus on my quality, not quantity of life. So I may choose to stop dialysis. I may choose to, discontinue medications that are maintaining my blood pressure or managing my heart. And instead, I want to focus on things that are more about just being comfortable. I don't need thyroid medication anymore, or some of those other things. So again, it's very specific to a person's situation and all of the things that they are dealing with. But hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think it's because like the last ones you just mentioned, I always think about those as being more in the treat me but not aggressively category. It's more the allow a natural death that seems to be a bit confusing. Some people ask questions about medical aid in dying there. Some people ask questions about VSED at that moment. Some folks are comfortable with it, they're really not. And I often, to another question, or maybe it was Lori's, like, I like to print this out for people because you can write in the margins and always add your own tips too. But they allow a natural death, I suppose, especially in like the incontinence ones. What would, yeah, is there something that's specifically addressing? Like, is that addressing the food and nutrition? Or
some people, the food and nutrition is, for some people, that's their primary focus.
yeah.
So yes, it could be that. So let's say, I've had people say that when I require briefs, like that's the line in the sand for me. I can't do it. Or, when my husband gets to that point, I can't manage him at home anymore, right? So there are surgical treatments. There are medications that could help those things. Do we want to do that? Is that worth it? Or are we going to focus more on comfort and adjust to briefs, and focusing that way? So that one is a little bit different because it's not necessarily a treatment, but it's a sign that the body is weakening, that the dementia is progressing.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Because maybe it's just even really knowing your client or whoever yourself and just making little notes on the side of what you might really be meaning to kind of flesh it out a little bit. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a very personal thing. And I did put in the chat the link to the webpage that will take you to the tool. And underneath the tool is the link to the updated paper version. I just updated it last week, the paper version. So you can open it up and you can complete it as a PDF and just save it, or you can print it out from there.
Yeah, that's an awesome option. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. Cindy?
Hi. just following up on some of what Lori said, just a comment, since you're in the middle of redoing this tool, I think what will throw some people is the use of using that word advanced dementia, because most doctors, I believe, will think that if they signed that tool in 2000 and that word was used advanced, they're going to think that possibly that person wasn't competent at the time and somebody else filled that out. Even though there's two witnesses, well, we all know where they could come from. So I'm wondering if possibly your lawyers might prefer that you use cognitive disorder, or because a cognitive disorder, you can be mentally competent. But I thought that most advanced dementias, that was the stage when you were no longer considered legally competent.
Yeah, thank you, Cindy. So a couple of things. You are correct. When somebody has reached that point of being late stage, end stage, advanced dementia, you can kind of take your pick of the preferred term there. Yes, presumably they have lost that decision-making capacity. However, at earlier in the disease, just because somebody has received a diagnosis does not automatically mean they have lost the capacity, right? It's something that happens usually as a slow and gradual process as the disease progresses. So I did not use a neurocognitive disorder because that can be other things besides a dementia. We went with dementia because dementia is the term most people are familiar with. However, I will share that in the updated version, we did take out, I did take out the advanced, the
Yeah.
focus on advanced.
That's what
and
I
it
was
just
talking about.
says if you are the progression of dementia. So I did take off that focus on advanced. So
That's perfect.
yeah, good job. You picked up on a very fine point there. One word makes all the difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Faye?
I had my question is the one Cindy just asked, but I'd like to drill down one more level on that because in the prior iteration of the dementia provision, it used that phrase, if I develop an advanced stage of Alzheimer's or another kind of dementia. And that always concerned me. And I can't remember where it was in your presentation today, Jessica, but I thought I heard that word again because I made a note about it. And that's the question I would like to ask you. Can we take out that word advanced wherever it comes so that a person, if they choose, could say, I want to find an exit ramp even earlier. I want to find an exit ramp from life in the early stage or the mid stage of dementia. And while I'm in those stages, I have the mental capacity to make healthcare decisions. And so if any of these things happen, and I'll list them, I like the way you've set them out this time. In those cases, I want you to honor my request to be allowed to stop eating and drinking. Is there any reason we couldn't just cross out the word advance every time it comes up?
Yeah, so actually I have done that and taken it out. I'm pretty sure almost everywhere in the online tool. And if you look at, so the current version of the PDF, the document that's available through the link, that language is what will be in the new online version. So I'm able to get this done a whole lot faster than I can work with the outside company that's doing the tool for us. So the PDF version that is on the website right now does reflect that change of language.
Thank you.
Thank you. It also adds space for signatures of witnesses and things and includes that little disclaimer about the legality of the document.
Thanks. Jessica, we had another question in the chat by somebody also named Jessica. Can you explain the thinking behind the question around the flexibility of following the wishes outlined?
Yeah, this was something that we added in this time because this is something that has come up for people. And sometimes this is in people's advanced directives, not the state forms, but ones that, maybe an attorney makes up or another organization has. It was one of those things that some people felt strongly about. So we included that question because it's another way to just really kind of get a sense as to where the person is and what their wishes are. And it's part of the conversation, right? So each question is meant to inspire conversation.
I think that is all the questions that I saw in the chat that didn't get answered. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I did want to add just one quick thing. Anne's comment there reminded me. So the final summary report is working as designed, but the format of it is creating confusion. And I did get a lot of feedback from people all over about that when it was initially sent out. And that is a big part of what is prompting this last final round of edits. So the format of that final report is being redone so that answers are not grouped together. It will be much more specific. Here's the question, here's the answer, so that that's more clear and we can cut down on that confusion. So stay tuned. We'll make sure you get the updated version online as soon as it's available.
Thank you. Thanks, Jessica, for staying a little over with us too. Any other, Nancy, did you have a question? No? Okay. I was gonna get you. Any other questions before we go? I'll go ahead and I'll put my email address in here too, in case you have anything, any other questions. Compassion. Sorry, sometimes it's hard for me to do multiple things. So there's my email address. If you have additional questions or if you want to get connected with Jessica, if you're an end-of-life doula or healthcare professional, feel free to email me and I'll connect you with her too, okay? And hi, Dion. I saw you enter. All right. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was wonderful. I can hardly wait to share it. Take care.
Thank you.
Really excited to hear the work you all do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.